right. Thank you. I'm hoping for mediocre things, mediocre things, mediocre things.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're glad that you're here, and we're going to get going with our keys presentation. Find your way to seats over here. And we have a lot of guests today, so make sure if you don't recognize somebody, introduce yourself and welcome them. And just glad that you're here and glad that we can spend some time together. Sign-ups are in the hallway for weeks to come, so make sure that you haven't signed up for that. And there are a couple of people that are going to be speaking to us that are here today. So I hope that we can take advantage of at least talking with them at lunch and getting a feel for where we're going. Bruce Martin here is one of them. And there's Susie Frost. So it's not all the time that we get to see our speakers before they come. And they get to see us, and I expect anybody who's sitting at their tables to get a full understanding of what the presentation will be for that day. And I'm going to work hard at getting more information on the sign-up so that people aren't asking questions that I can't answer. Okay, so we want to have as much time as possible, and because Kathy knows our speaker, I've asked her to come and introduce him, and we'll get going.
I'm so happy that, and flattered, quite frankly, that Richard would make the drive down from Austin to share with us some of his knowledge today. You're all in for a real treat. He's actually, a little background, he's actually the reason that I even entered the collecting of postcard arena. I heard that there was going to be a presentation down at the Central Library about San Antonio and its history as seen through postcards. And I thought that sounded like something I'd be interested in seeing. So there I went. And when I walked into the room, there was a loop going of old postcards that represented San Antonio. It was very nostalgic for me. And then when I heard the presentation, I thought, sounds kind of interesting collecting postcards. They cost, what, 10 cents, a quarter, something like that. So I started my collection with San Antonio. I have a pretty complete collection of all the cards that I've ever been able to find of San Antonio, thanks to Richard. So now here he is, fast forward like 8 years later, and we're doing this presentation for you. So let me tell you a little bit about Richard. He's a native Texan, born and raised on Galveston Island, where his parents encouraged his interest in history. For nearly 25 years, Richard has worked at the Texas State Preservation Board, the state agency that cares for the Texas Capitol. Richard holds an MA in Museum Studies from George Washington University and a BA in American Studies from the University of Texas. Yes, I knew you wanted to do that. His devoted hobby is collecting and studying vintage Texas picture postcards, and he is currently writing a reference book to be titled Lunar Landscapes and Other Pre-1900 Texas Postcards. So please welcome Richard Eisenhower.
Thank you all. Help you down? Well, thank you. Since can you all hear me on my mic? Can you on this? So I'm gonna, can you all hear me? Or should I use this? Okay, very good, thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you all see me okay? Do I need to stand on something? Back 8 years ago, as Kathy mentioned, sorry, Robin. As Kathy mentioned, about 8 years ago, it was the San Antonio Public Library, the central library, that asked me to do the presentation on an overview of San Antonio postcards. I went in there specifically just doing the fledgling research for this book I'm now trying to finish, and hopefully it will be just 6 months before I finish it, hopefully. But it was about trying to track down the earliest Texas postcards, the ones that predate 1900. And everyone always asks, why 1900? Being from Galveston, and this right now is an auspicious time because we have just this last Monday surpassed the 125th anniversary of the great hurricane of September 8th, 1900, which was estimated to have taken on the island of Galveston about 8,000 souls, about 8,000 lives. On the mainland, maybe another 2,000 to 4,000 from this Category 4 hurricane when it slammed into Galveston. And as such, as a native Galvestonian, I have 2 generations of my family before 1900 in Galveston, and 2 generations, including me, after 1900. So it's a watershed and defining moment in many native Galvestonians' lives. We say, what happened before the storm? What happened after the storm? And so when the internet came along and online auctions like eBay and Del Camp came along, and we started seeing that what we thought was rare in, say, before the internet was commonplace on the internet, and things that we'd never seen before started appearing on the internet and on eBay, and it began finding pre-1900 Galveston souvenir postcards. What? I didn't think there was anything before 1900 in Galveston other than the buildings and the souvenir books, and I began to ask the question, are these the earliest Texas tourist postcards? No. I soon learned that San Antonio had the first. Yay! So we'll go into this now. Let me, we have that. There we go. We'll just, focus. Soyez tranquilo. And we move on. So, greetings from San Antonio, origins of Texas, or origins of postcards in the Lone Star State. The San Antonio Daily Light in January of 1899 talks about postcards from the European continent, postcards in England, the collecting of postcards, but the collectors only wanted to have canceled postcards that you send one by one by one. That didn't stop people from collecting whatever they could find. But they mentioned nothing in 1899 of San Antonio's early postcards. They just mentioned what's going on in the world. Locally, just the evidence survives. So this is fascinating. Of course, this is Alamo Plaza. We're looking toward, on the left, the red brick building on the left is the Opera House and a variety of businesses around the plaza. And this is just to say, when you see this is from the Aline B. Carter collection. You'll see a lot of the Carter collection in here. That this wrapper, which holds its original postcards, is sold through Eberswhite. I'd never heard of them, but apparently they were Texas's biggest postal card dealers, wholesale and retail, at least according to them. And they were located right on Alamo Plaza, which for 100 years ago should tell you that Alamo Plaza has been the Mecca center for tourism in San Antonio for a very long time, and having a lot to do with the Alamo. Now this is the Aline Carter home. You may know it. It's just to the north of Tobin Center for the Performing Arts. I hope I've got my directions right. West? East. Okay, it's across the street. Sorry about that. I'm not local, I'm sorry. But it was designed by Alfred Giles, built for the Maverick family in 1893, and then bought in 1914 by the Carter family. So yeah, Maverick Carter House, 1893, 119 Taylor Street in San Antonio. And Aline Carter was Texas's poet laureate from 1947 to 49. So we go on. 1901, we see this in the San Antonio Daily Light. Collectors of souvenir postal cards can find albums. This is becoming a rage now. Still not mentioning about the development of Texas postcards, but we take what we can get and look at souvenir postal cards. Collectors can find albums at Moo's. Was it on Houston Street? Yes, East Houston Street. Probably not far from the Alamo Plaza. But the albums they're beautiful albums. They just weren't made to last the ages. You would slip the cards in, like you see here. This came from the Moody Mansion collection. You could collect all your postal souvenirs. This is from the Aline Carter collection, showing a collection of San Antonio postcards collected about 1910. And not everyone was a fan. So from 1906, from a critic of what was called this pestilence called, whoops, put that back on, postcard-itis, where this pestilence, once somebody in New York City sends a postcard to somebody in Tenafly, New Jersey, then the people in Tenafly say, we have no postcards to show the glories of our township. We need to print some postcards. Well, they all go into the albums, and these monstrosities, as it says, are often bestowed on the center table of the parlor. And about the only thing that can be said in their defense is that they crowd off the plush thesaurus of family celebrities that you inflict upon the hapless visitor. So important dates. 1873, I won't go through anything this time before the advent of tourist postcards in Texas. We're going to start with 1873 on this chart, showing that the first government postal card in this country is just postal stationery. And this lasts for 20 years up until the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, when the first widespread use of beautiful picture postcards appears. But only 3 years later, you know that in Texas, we don't do anything fast, but just 3 years later, we get our own first picture postcard. And then it goes from there. 1902, the worldwide obsession begins, the worldwide fad, where millions and millions and millions of cards are beginning to trade hands. And then 1907, the modern era of the postcard, in which they put a line down the back. There used to be that you'd have to put the sender's name only on the back, and then the front, the picture had to share space with your message, but they put a line down the back, had the message share space with the address, and the modern age of the postcard begins. So, we're going to begin with an example of the World's Columbian Exposition from 1893 being sent from somebody in the Gunther family of San Antonio, being sent to a member of the family back here in San Antonio. And just to show you an example of this postcard, it was just printed on the back of what was standard U.S. Post Office postal card stationery. It was cheaper this way. The Postal Service had the monopoly over what rates they charged for sending printed matter through the mail. If you printed your picture postcards or your illustrated images on the backs of postal cards, you could send it for 1 penny domestically, Canada, Mexico, and only 2 cents foreign. But if you privately printed this without their postal stationery on the back, you would be charged letter rate. And it would go 2 cents domestic, Canada, Mexico, and 5 cents foreign. That's the equivalent of about $1.25 to mail something to Europe when it could cost you just 50 cents. Say a penny for a quarter, penny for a quarter. So 1896, and this is where Kathy's expecting. I'm repeating the lecture that I did 8 years ago, but there are a lot of enhancements to it. One of them is coming up. This is an example of the oldest known San Antonio picture postcard, and it advertises on the flip side of this card, the Minger Hotel. Why not? And on the bottom of both sides, it says San Antonio, and this little tiny script down at the bottom, San Antonio is the ideal health resort, year-round. So, now, that's why I brought this lovely branch. Got to put this on. When I did this 8 years ago, this card was missing. Sorry, I'm pointing up there, but I should be pointing up here. I'm seeing a screen there. Sorry about that. So I need to go into here. There we go. At the time, this card was only known in a little booklet that was published in 1957, and the question is, where is it? Where is another example of this card? And I likened it to the missing link, where we peer through the bushes and we try to find the Bigfoot that's missing. Where is this postcard? It's got to be around here somewhere, but nobody had seen one since 1957. So we get rid of Bigfoot. So 2018, just a year after I originally did this lecture, thealamocity.com. Have any of you ever seen thealamocity.com? Here it shows everything you would want to know for one man, Joseph Cooper, and his San Antonio collection, plus currency, plus first day covers, everything available to you in high resolution. So he managed to find one of these cards on eBay. Here's the advertisement for the Minger Hotel. Goodbye, missing link. Sorry about that. I'm told that mountain laurels about this size, when sold as plants, are about $30, so I apologize to the nursery industry. So, and then here, from October of 1898, it's in rough shape, but this is a living example of this earliest souvenir card. Then, I bested him, I'm sorry to say it. The Conservation Society of San Antonio, an earlier card appeared. Joseph Cooper was not happy. He wanted to have the earliest and the first of it. And this one is dated August of 1897. I will get into this card in a bit. He was so livid when he found out that they had a card that was older than the one that he found. He went out and found another one even older. He found another better condition example of the first card from the Minger Hotel from October of 1896, and this is the oldest one so far. We're waiting, with bated breath to see, Now look, they could fit on this card in black and white steel engravings showing the old federal building that was on Alamo Plaza, the Alamo itself, Mission Concepcion, Mission San Jose, and Fort Sam Houston, known as the U.S. government post, and that's it. Now, I found recently a letter showing this same illustration from 1897, and here each page of the letter shows that advertisement for the Minger Hotel. San Antonio is the ideal health resort, but on the back of one of the sheets you see this, and it is everything else that they couldn't fit on the postcard. So a lot of times these early cards, I think of them as extensions of hotel stationery, and this certainly lends itself to that these cards are just extensions of hotel stationery, whether in America or in Europe. Now, I'm going to go to Galveston before I go to San Antonio. My native home, this man, Ferdinand Ohlendorf, came to town from Germany in the early 1880s and soon set himself up as a souvenir stationery store seller of books and papers and newspapers and postcards eventually. And he had printed from the Whitman Company, or Albert Type Company of Brooklyn, New York, souvenir albums, which were all the rage in the 1880s and the 1890s. And they featured what was called the Glaser method of lithography, where it is just in black and white, but Louis Glaser of Leipzig, Germany, developed this method of lithography where you have 4 or 5 different gradations of black ink, gray ink, to build the richness of the scene. Eventually moved into a sort of a photolithography called photogravure, which you can see here on the cover of this volume. And then in this illustration, showing the harbor and the Bay Bridge, here he developed postcards in 1898. These are not gorgeous, they're not full color, but this is what made me question, are these the oldest? No, they're not. You know this already. It's San Antonio. The backs of these, Ohlendorf was not silly. He had them printed on U.S. government postal cards. So you see this one is going, this one, keep pointing there. This one is going to Austria, and all they have to do is add an extra penny to get it overseas. Anticipating perhaps that those people coming into the seaport of Galveston may not be well-heeled tourists. They could be the workers on the boat. They're demanding postcards, but they don't have a lot of money to spend on privately printed cards that would cost $1.25 or $1.50 to get overseas, the equivalent, that is. The Beach Hotel, beautiful. And it burned 2 years before the storm. And the Pagoda Bathhouse, the bathing pavilion on the beach, it was one of the first casualties of the Great Hurricane. The residences on Broadway, the Catholic Church, the Ursuline Convent, for what Alfred Giles and James Warrenberger were for architecture here in San Antonio, in Galveston we had the sophistication of Nicholas Joseph Clayton. Now, not everyone was a fan. Right after the storm, this person is riding off to their relatives in Bremerhaven, Germany, and they're saying, well, they said, what a pity we couldn't go with you to Bremerhaven, but if you look down in the fine print down below, it says, please excuse this being the same kind of postcard as Miss H's, but I did not know it until it was sent, or written and sent. These are the very poor quality of postcards that we get here. And how does that compare to what she's used to? This is a view of Bremerhaven at the same time. How can you beat full-color lithography? But we just didn't have it here in Texas. In San Antonio, now we move on. Paul Wagner had a wonderful business down on Commerce Street, about where Shiloh's Delicatessen is now. Do you all know Shiloh's? I hope so. We won't leave it behind. I want to make sure. So Paul Wagner produced these accordion-style, glazer-processed, layered, black and white, lithographed views of San Antonio. And here he is. And his bazaar on Commerce Street, importer and dealer in fancy goods, toys and notions, Mexican and Indian curiosities, his letterhead, and then, of course, his store, as featured in that booklet I showed you. Now, he produced this gorgeous card, produced by Louis Glaser of Leipzig, Germany. This is called full-color lithography or chromolithography. Each color that you see requires a separate printing block to produce that color. And you say, well, do they do one card at a time? Oops, can you all hear me okay? Sorry about that. I'll put that on. My ears just aren't big enough, obviously. Let's put that down. There we go. Full color lithography, much better. Sorry about that. So full color lithography, they would print these in large sheets and ink the stones for the pink, the yellow, the green, the blue, and then mechanically cut them all apart. So down here you see Paul Wagner's name. What you're missing is, what's been cut off is Louis Glaser's name from Leipzig, Germany, the one who actually printed them. The publisher was the retailer, the local retailer of the cards. Now, the backs of them show that they are not on government postal cards. Domestically, at the time before a certain period when this regulation changed, it required 2 cents to send it domestically, 5 cents foreign. To show you, Wagner just took the images from his album. Here's the Alamo, adapted to color. We have Concepcion, Mission Concepcion, adapted. And of course, Mission San Jose. And I began to wonder when I first saw this, did he do a series? How come we could only find this card? This is only 3 of the 5 missions. There must be, there's the government building on Alamo Plaza and all those things you saw on the back of the Menger stationery. He's got it. He had to have done more cards. No, he was in failing health at this time, and this was just an experiment. But he did it up great. And before 1900, this is the only color card we know. Whereas in Germany, they had thousands of cards like these in Germany. Not of San Antonio, but of German scenes. So he could have done all of these scenes as they appeared in his souvenir book. Here, he features on one of the last pages his store amongst the landmarks of Texas. And what's amazing is the new City Hall from 1891, the state capitol built in 1888, and Paul Wagner's Grand Bazaar. So his primary competition for souvenir books and stationery was Nicholas Ting, who also had a Commerce Street store location and who published souvenir books like this one. I apologize that these illustrations are a little fuzzy, but you get the idea that they closely matched what Paul Wagner had in that Glaser process, Louis Glaser in lithography. Ting, he produced black and white, lithographed or collotyped or photogravured and he signed his name, Nick Ting, on these. This becomes important later because some of the cards I'm trying to find have nothing as for who did them. So many different views, mainly pulled from the albums. Ting lasted long enough beyond Wagner to go into the color age, into the 19-teens, and then into what we call, well, I call it the doldrums. Everything's kind of flat, and we'll get to that later, kind of dull. And then into the linen era of vibrant colors, and then finally up into the 1940s and souvenir postal views. The private mailing card era lasted, it was a probationary period. You remember that I said that if you didn't use a US government postal card, it would cost you extra postage because the U.S. Postal Service mandated that your privately printed cards went at letter rate. So with public demand, public lobbying, government lobbying, or excuse me, private group lobbying, the government relented, saying, you know, we're kind of tired of printing all these postal cards anyway. You can have your privately printed postal cards go at the postal card rate as the U.S. government, 1 cent domestic, 2 cents foreign, but will give you a probationary status. So from an act of Congress that was passed May 19th, 1898, this act went into effect July 1st of that year and lasted until the end of 1901. Probationary in that every card you printed and sent through the mail had to say on the back this cumbersome mouthful, private mailing card, blah, 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 blah. But it achieved a great effect. It released the floodgates of publishers who finally could sell to the public, and this new wave of fad of postcard collecting would start. Now, for me, for the book on which I'm working, that I'm tentatively calling Lunar Landscapes, it has a meaning, I swear. I'm not just throwing that out there. What are you talking about, lunar landscapes? What are you... Yeah. Is that, for example, there were cards printed on blue cardstock in the private mailing card era that had the addition of moons and cloud effects. And I thought, well, you know, lunar landscapes, no, it'll change. And so anyway, there are all these cards. The only question is, who published them? The only information they have the title. You can see the title there. And they have this little tiny number. When I began finding these things, and I'll get into that. I forgot. I'm getting ahead of myself. So these, it's not just San Antonio. It was Austin, Fort Worth, Houston, and that's it. So 4 major cities covered in this massive series that lasted, I think, 124 cards, published here in San Antonio, but we don't know by whom. There's no information. I thought I had a hero, and then I realized through additional research that he was just too busy to do all of this nonsense. So Austin in April of 1899, showing the Great Granite Dam, which burst the next year. 2 early Texas collectors. This is how I found out about this series of cards on which I'm working on about the book, doing the book. Alberta Askew, go back to her. Alberta Askew on the left and Arthur Genter of the Pioneer Flour Mills family here in San Antonio, 2 major early collectors. So Miss Alberta Askew, this is how I got started. This was in 2013. This card sent about 1902 by Alberta Askew. She lived very close to the Capitol, and she corresponded with pen pals all over the world. But when a friend asked me in 2013, have you ever heard of Alberta Askew? And I said, yes. Who was she? And he said, nobody knows. But all of the earliest Austin postcards seem to pass through her hands. That's not necessarily true, but she seemed to have been the very earliest collector. And on this card that I discovered in my friend Ken Wukash's collection in 2013, she says, I have for exchange cards of Texas, 40 different subjects, mailed separately. They all want the cards to be canceled and posted separately. But for her, 40 different cards in 1902. I knew about Galveston and its pre-1900 cards, but what were these 40 different cards? What were these 40 different cards? What were they? And then I thought, you know what? This one has one of those funny little registration numbers on the corner. And they appear for San Antonio, for Austin, for Houston, and for Fort Worth. What would happen if you took all the cards you can find and put those numbers in order? What would it reveal? And they revealed quite a story that there was an order to it: San Antonio, Austin, Houston, and Fort Worth. Alberta Askew always signed her cards 1800 Colorado Street, Austin, today the site of a 1960s condo tower called the Westminster Towers. We're in the Westminster room, no relation. But here you can see the home in which she lived, which was right on the corner today where the swimming pool is for the tower. And then it goes away. And the 1800 Colorado is significant because that's where she lived while she was collecting. And all of these surviving cards, she received this one from England from a pen pal in 1902. And note there, it's not 1907, this is England. This is sophisticated England and Europe, or Wales and Scotland and Europe. And you see the dividing line here showing that early on, they could write their message on the left side and their address on the right, and they didn't have to just put the message on one side and the address on the other. But then this one from 1903 from Italy to Miss Alberta Askew, and this one from Belgium. Now with Albert Notum, I found a whole correspondence back and forth, and realizing that Alberta Askew had much fewer cards here in America and in San Antonio and Austin to send back to Belgium than did Albert Notum. So Alberta is not just corresponding with Austin postcards. She's grabbing from San Antonio. She's grabbing from Little Rock, Arkansas, from Colorado Springs. She's grabbing cards from wherever anyone had any of them. And then in 1907, this card is the newest that we can find penned by her, showing the state capitol. In 1907, she married a prominent local Austin physician, and her penmanship, her pen pal nature with the rest of the world abruptly stopped. Arthur Genter in San Antonio in 1899 sent his kiddos, his two boys, Ernst and Hilmar being the older one, sent them off to Wiesbaden, Germany to get their secondary education. And here's the Arthur Gunter family with his wife, I believe that's Elise, and then Hilmar on top and Ernst on the bottom. They corresponded in both English and German, because these kids are going off to get a proper education on the European continent, and so they're writing back and forth. These are some of the cards that Arthur, the father, sent to Hilmar, the son, and they're in both English and German. Now, I don't read German. If any of you do, I'm going to become your new best friend. I want to know what they're saying. Now, in the English ones, they're interesting enough. So what are they saying in German? In this one of the Paul Wagner cards, and this one, by the way, you can see on the side here. Whoops, sorry, Robin. You can see on the side here where it says published by or printed by Louis Glaser. It's an oversized card, so a lot of people trim these down to fit them into albums. But here he says, "My dear son, May 22nd, 1899, complying with your request of the 5th of this month, I now mail to you a postal card for your collection. I told Paul Rokes, who has already several of your cards, to write you and to do so at an early date." So Hilmar and his younger brother Ernst are amassing a collection, as was very popular amongst the young in Germany, in France, and other places, and the father is trying to gather all that he can. This is the only color card he can find, but he finds all those anonymously printed cards. Here's the back of the card. By the way, a 5-cent stamp to get it overseas. And some of them are rather interesting. This one shows a bar on Alamo Plaza called the New Post Office Exchange Saloon. It's a very sophisticated place. You know, I wouldn't stand a chance being decapitated with these floor fans that probably go up to here. But look, if you will, I wonder if this is for last call for alcohol, and they turn on all the lights so that the cockroaches who are left in the bar scurry. Up here we have what is essentially a carbon arc street light. They do this in a number of businesses at the time as quick, bright lighting. And because the incandescent bulbs and the gas lighting isn't quite enough on the darkest of days. Beautiful liquors in the cabinets, a beautifully carved mahogany stained bar, and a wonderful brass rail above and below. A very nice place. And this is all the level of sophistication you would have found in saloons and bars around Alamo Plaza, where business and commerce mattered. Here, it was in the Maverick Bank building, that wonderful building that disappeared about 1920s, I believe. That was on the corner of Houston and Alamo in Alamo Plaza, and that's where the bar was located. Today, of course, you recognize the Woolworth building, or what remains of it, at Houston and Alamo. And so, there we are. Another bar. My dear boy, I do not think you have ever seen this place, but this should be all right for your collection. So this is William Booth's Monkey Hotel Bar, and a better view of it. A little more dowdy than the new Post Office Exchange Saloon, but the the Monkey Hotel was located in this little two-story building that was built in the 1850s. And then it was torn down when Louis Monkey died in, I think, 1905. In 1906 was built the Gunter. I mean, that's a small building. You've got to build the Gunter. It's going to allow more people. Now, in 1899, in August, do you think we're hot now? Look at this. They didn't have AC at the time. Arthur Ginther says, hot! 106 degrees Fahrenheit at present in our office. Still, we are all well. And this is weird. This card is so strange. Arthur Ginther, splintered off from the family's pioneer flour mills and opened Liberty Mills with a partner. And this tourist postcard is more so an order form, but nonetheless, it was printed as amongst the tourist postcards. So there you are. And this is what remains of a later incarnation of pioneer flour mills today. There were other cards in this 18. Oh, by the way, the family has this wonderful, surviving, amazing collection. Not just San Antonio, but cards that were sent to and from and around Germany and to and from San Antonio, like this one from 1899. This one being sent to Ernst Günther. And then this one from Nice in France in 1899, August of 1899, with one of those moonlight atmospherics. And then this one is being sent to the family home here in San Antonio at 231 Washington Street, which is in we'll blow that up a bit. That's in the King William Street district. I love the bicycle on the walk. Not everything is sterile and museum and preserved. So this is the Günther family home at 231 Washington Street in King William District. Now, divided backs in England, 1902, you've already seen this. This space now may well be used for communication as well as putting the address. And then, but in the US, before 1907, the address only on one side. This is very important. And the message had, or the picture, or both, have to share space. And this created some problems. So here we have San Antonio, a conclave of cowboys, and they're going to fit this message anywhere they can. And that's the way it is, and you have to deal with it. Imagine trying to find your message or put your message where there is no space to write it. This is Galveston, my native home, showing one of the bathing pavilions. But here, the Minger Hotel, the writing sort of forms the clouds in the sky, and that's the way it is. So, beginning about 1902, for 15 years, coinciding with World War I, we began a golden age in the country and in the world for high quality, full color lithography and collotype imagery. Anyway, so December 1901, the private mailing card ends. 1907, down here, the divided back cards are allowed, so you have the modern postcard age ushered in. 1909, we have this great big fad worldwide of collecting postcards, but the domestic manufacturers in this country have had it. So they lobby with Congress to produce what's called the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act. This is to put tariffs, never heard that word before, have you? Put tariffs on foreign goods, especially printing, to have them compete fairly with what we can produce in this country. Haven't heard that before either. And that is that in this country, the printers said, we can do just as good a job on printing these postcards and other things as those German printers can. And that just was not the case. So the dealers here in this country began stockpiling cards, thinking, well, we better buy everything up now before the prices go up, and that way we will make it rich. And what happened, of course, unfortunately, is that the public was very finicky. They liked fresh material. They didn't want yesterday's postcards. It's like day-old bread. So the whole industry just collapsed. World War I didn't help any. Let's see, so World War I begins in 1914. We did that. Where are we? Oh, I see what we're doing. We're hitting the wrong button. There we go. 1902, the standard size of American postcards is set at 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches. The Hot Wells bathhouse. There we go. And it's not just view cards, it's topical cards, Santa Clauses, St. Patrick's Day, and, real feathers attached, springtime cards, Easter cards, everything you can imagine, anything, your airplanes, the romance of travel, the romance of romance, everything, Valentine cards. Do you all know who this is? I already gave you a clue. The Hearst publication, this homeless man, this unhoused man, is called Happy Hooligan. The Aline Carter collection, you can see an album containing both views and greetings. Views and greetings. And then, of course, a plethora of color cards celebrating the fiesta, the floral, the Battle of the Flowers. Beautiful cards. And the local views picked up with the demand. Raphael Tuck and Sons of London, and with offices in Paris and New York, printed their cards in Germany, or had them printed in Germany, showing the sophistication of San Antonio, the Minger Hotel, the Hot Wells Bathhouse, Mission Concepcion, and of course, Alamo Plaza. But they do something a little more, it's like photoshopping. They add in sophisticated and well-dressed tourists and business people. And if you look at a different version by the same publisher in black and white, you get a better idea that you can see where they cut people out and pasted them onto the plate. Little line going around there just to add more sophistication to the scene so that the visitor coming in from New York or Paris or Rome is going to think, San Antonio is with it. There we go. A lot of the cards could be found lithographed. Lithography, by the way, is an oil-based process where there's wax impressions on the stone where you want the ink to sit, and then the other parts, the ink would not sit, but it is variegated. When you blow it up, you see that it's, by the way, but you do see, this is interesting, this is uniform. That's uniform, it's like a grid. Half of this card is printed in lithography, and the other half is photomechanically reproduced. So they're beginning to save money as this fad continues along. There we go. Yeah, blows up. Half photomechanically reproduced, the other half a bit more technically difficult in lithography. Uniform, ununiform. These, however, were lithographed of San Antonio by the Adolf Selig Company of Germany for a local publisher. Oh, we have another video. It won't last long. I have to explain the statistics. There we go. This is showing the postal workers in New York's post office in 1903, and they're sorting like mad. And so 1906, which was just about the height of the postcard fad around the world, the U.S. is recorded to have sent or corresponded in roughly 770,500,000 cards. Great Britain, not far behind, 500,000 cards, even though Germany was producing most of the cards for the world, plus themselves. Those factories over in Bavaria were producing for their own output 1,161,000,000 postcards. The postal systems were drowning in postcards. And could it continue? Not for very long. 1909, the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act, the lithography goes pew down the tubes, and the tariffs go in. 1915, in the middle of World War I, the printers locally hit what I call Dolesville. 1920s, the real photo postcard hits its big stride in the face of Dolesville. And then 1930, we're entering the Great Depression. There's a new revival in postcards, and you'll recognize them instantly. They're vibrant, they're lurid in their color, and they look so what we would call Art Deco. And then in 1945, the end of World War II, we have the photochrome process, which is the modern era that we're in now. First Presbyterian. Thank you, Kathy. Where are you, Kathy? There you are. So this is like that card I showed you of the Bexar County Courthouse. This area here is photomechanically reproduced while the clouds were lithographed. But what's interesting about this, on the back of this card, you see 1911, the description, First Presbyterian Church, San Antonio, one of the modern styles of architecture in edifices of devotion at San Antonio. Probably not modern, let's say current, because this church is very much Gothic revival. Okay, I go on. Dolesville. Everything's flat. I like this card because I think of it as the postcard industry hitting the skids. They're doing what they can to stay afloat, and it's like trying to fly a lead balloon. So, 1915 to 1930, they're not doing anything imaginative. They're just trying to stay afloat. The postcard fad is gone, but they still know there's some interest in having views, local views of towns all over the country. And they even produce what's called white border. It makes you think, there's some sophistication here. They've got a white border, so it frames it up. No, it saves ink. This one, look at this. Okay, we have RIP. Okay, so we have RIP, the famous Eastland County Courthouse discovered horned toad or horned lizard or horned frog. And originally this said, horned toad of California. Well, we'll just cross that out and write in Texas. Why print anything new? This painting, a massive painting at the front, the main lobby of the state capitol, shows the surrender of President of Mexico, General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, to General Sam Houston, who is, of course, here. When reproduced as a postcard in this era, I don't know what you have. And I don't know what this was up here, but they just decided to blot it out. So AlamoCity.com has this view. Are we done yet? Oh, almost am, okay. And then the parade for the Battle of the Flowers. They're barely trying. Photomechanically reproduced. They can't even color inside the lines. And these two fellows don't look that happy either. Have more water, thank you. Just do this. Please wake me. So we have the rise of the real photo postcard. About, let's see, well, we'll get into it. Kodak and other photographic apparatus folks decide to capitalize on this. Like you push the button, we do the rest. But in this case, they decide to create postcard-sized cameras. Now, these are not cameras that actually produce postcards. These are cameras that have roll film with apertures or dimensions that are postcard-sized negatives. So if you have a home darkroom, you're an amateur photographer, you want to produce your own postcards, just go in the darkroom. The negative is already the size of a postcard. They will sell you postcard or photosensitive postcard paper with the postcard backing already on it, and all you have to do is a contact print, and you have your own postcards. For example, whoops, let's try that. There we go. 1906, very early. The first balloon in plain view. Well, he didn't know how to spell balloon. That's how it's the first one he ever saw. So in plain view, maybe this person was at that event, shot this picture and a couple of others, went into the drugstore across the street. Maybe he worked for the pharmacy. This was the local postcard printer. And he went into the pharmacy, printed off, say 50 or 100 of these, went back out into the crowd, and sold them for 5 or 10 cents a piece while the event was still going on. This is instant photojournalism. This is photojournalism in action. You don't have to wait for your printer in the next 6 months. Here, photojournalism, the flood of 1913, guests being moved from the Gunter Hotel, and it's just documenting it on the scene. A little more sophisticated than the balloon. Or the Battle of the Flowers during Fiesta, the infantry marching down Alamo Street. Whoops, it's a wonderful shot, right on the spot. Here you have the Maverick Bank building, and then, it's just crisp and very nice, and it's just, there's none of this airbrushing or, photoshopping, or essentially. Capturing the oil fields in the 1920s in West Texas. And then, that's in the daytime, the boomtown, maybe the potential lawlessness. You have a nighttime shot of a disaster. Wow! This is on-the-spot reporting. So, J.A. Knowles' #1 oil well in the Supply House district of Kilgore. That's East Texas, right? Sorry, not West, sorry. Caught fire at 4 a.m. June 1st. 3 men were very badly injured, very badly burned. But this records and documents it on a photo postcard. And then you also had it in the studio. This is the Electric Park studio here in San Antonio. These props are great. I love these props. To make you feel as though you can afford a motor car, you don't have to take the train, you can drive anywhere you want. But this is how they were produced. A series of these cards, a local collector in Austin found a series of these cards. They're amazing. Setting up at a sideshow, they say, photographs on postcards and other novelties finished in 10 minutes, day or night, a sampling of the cards they can produce. Look, there's a car. And they have a variety of other props they can set up. And then what's even better, the message, what we call a content message on the back of the card. And it says, I don't know if not going that way, Robin, sorry. Let's see if I might have to come back to this. Let's see. Yay, I did it. Washington, Iowa, July 23rd, 1910. This is a picture of my new tent and outfit and new force. And we are well and having a good time, and maybe our first day and night at the fair next week. Write me a letter, explain what you know about Indianapolis and why I should not go there. I will be at Quincy, Illinois, July 23rd to the 30th. So this is, please tell me, Indianapolis, why I shouldn't go there. So this is a text or the tweet of the time saying, come on, keep me informed. And then here in San Antonio, come out and airship with me. It's great. San Antonio is one of the ding-bust biggest places I ever did see from an airship before. Be good and drop me a line sometime. And this is wonderful because nobody had their own camera. So you went into one of these studios, very few, but maybe somebody wealthier would have had their own camera to be able to record this. In Galveston, where I'm from, on one of the bathing pavilions, this sign, your photo on a postcard in bathing suit or street dress made while you wait. Gesundheit, by the way. And then in Galveston, these props, no cars, you gotta have a boat. But this one just slays me. So on the left, we have one from the 1920s, and notice the same bow wave, the same prop. This is 1943. This is wonderful. Let's see if I made it a little larger. Yeah, there we go. Better come and join us, son. I'm sure you will remember the same old studio, same old props, and even the same old woman photographer where you and I posed in this same boat 27 years ago. Love it. Now, you can't believe everything you see, so there's AI at the time, which is their own version of Photoshop on real photo postcards. So I love this, yeah. A train holdup in Wansers, Dalhart, Texas. Skinning a jackrabbit. This was a common theme on many different forms of cards. Lassoing a steer from a jackrabbit. And of course, later on would come the infamous jackalope. All right, so the Lenin years. Lenin cards were a way to react against the Great Depression. By the way, how are we doing on time? How are we doing? You tell me when I need to speed it along, right? All right. So Lenin cards is using water-based inks primarily and cheaper paper. Again, you see that border around the cards to save ink, but using vibrant inks. Now, this paper is called linen finish. Linen finish. And it's supposed to give you a level of sophistication, but what it really does is that ink travels into the valleys and the peaks of this embossed linen finish paper. Come on, back we go. You can see the magnification on this. Photomechanically reproduced images that are airbrushed with these vibrant colors that bounce out at your eyes. From 1930 to about 1945, maybe as late as 1950, these vibrant colors revived the printed postcard industry in this country and set a standard that made you think of, when you think of postcards, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, who may have left you collections, probably began with these cards, sending them to you when you were kids, or maybe even you collected some of them in the 1950s. Hard to say. But vibrant, great for advertising. Wow, Earl Abels, boy, do we miss Earl Abels. And wonderful, doesn't that look sophisticated and fun for those of us who used to go out at night? I don't. Taishan, so great. I mean, gets rid of the telephone wires, gets rid of everything that's not essential. What, you want the interior of you're going to paint the interior of your restaurant purple? Well, we can do it on the postcard first. Don't worry about it. And then for advertising, the Barber College in Tyler, Texas. Beautiful. Look at this restaurant in Houston. Wow. You know, one of my old professors from UT, Jeffrey Meikle, wrote a book on this called Postcard America about the Kurt Teich Company of Chicago that perfected this process. Kurt Teich, and in fact, they developed a system where you see here, this says 6AH1470. A stood for the 1930s, and the number in front of the A was the year, so you can tell that's 1936. But he mentioned in earlier articles on this subject that this was like a paper Atlantis. You know that this place must have existed, but in its current form, dressed up like this, you can never get there. And I mean, you know it must exist, but it doesn't look like that. So photochrome era begins at the end of World War II, and these are photomechanically reproduced, not contact prints like real photo postcards, photomechanically reproduced postcards. Let's see, hemisphere, of course. You know, we mentioned before about this, where you have photomechanical reproduction on the buildings, and then lithography, where it's oil-based inks in the sky. And here is a 1970s view. Oh, there's St. Joski's. And we have remnant buildings of the World's Fair here. They have, you know, but you blow this up and it kind of dissolves. It's photomechanically reproduced. It's not a real photograph per se. It's reprinted. Riverwalk. Oh, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but depending on who's printing it, meh, not so good. Nighttime shots are great in this chrome era. Photochrome meaning a chromolithograph. No, that's not right. I'm sorry. I don't want to confuse you. Photochrome, it's a photomechanical color reproduction. And then motels. Oh, North Star Shopping Mall. How many of you ever went? Our beautiful highways, orderly, low speed, clean. Our beautiful airports. Deckle Edge, by the way, Deckle Edge, you know, making it look just a little bit more sophisticated by creating that edge. Of course, the hemisphere we saw. And then we're getting up into the modern era. Even now, this is already a historical document because we are now missing the Institute of Texan Cultures. So, now just a word about preservation. These albums, do any of you in your family collections have any original family collections of postcards in their original albums? Not many. Not many people. Back about the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when people started getting interested in collecting antique picture postcards, the albums came apart. The cards went into their various categories, which is good, but it's also rare to see these albums, like in the Carter family collection, but they're usually in a poor state of preservation. The edges are tattered. Now, what is important about this is that if you ever found one of these albums, it would be important to document how the original collector organized the albums, then take them apart. You can save the album, you just don't want to keep the cards in them. The pages are made of what we call paper pulp or sulfurous acidic paper. But the cards may be more sophisticated, but they suffer in the albums. And so, yeah, you can see this one's falling to pieces. Another one's falling to pieces. But if you want to go examine one of these albums available to you, go to Sheila's. Have you all seen the postcard collection in the back room? Have you had a mug of root beer in your hands and have the split pea soup and then go in the back room? You know, Sheila's is a wonderful San Antonio institution, and in the back room, along with all the mounts, you have the pages of one of these albums, or several of these albums, put up on the wall so that you can investigate for yourself what a real and genuine San Antonio collection was all about. And there are some novelties in here. Okay, there we have Easter cards and New Year's cards and St. Patrick's. These are amazing. These are called Hold to Lights. They were printed in Germany for the most part and die cut so that when you hold them up to the light, a thinner layer of paper will show you in front of, say, a lamp or a window, the windows and the moons come out. So they have a box of these that they've separated them out, and you turn on the light, and then the night comes up. It's wonderful. It's amazing that for something that's 115 years old, it still works in the same way it was meant to. All right. So big thanks especially to the AlamoCity.com because most of this presentation came from their collection. Aline B. Carter family, Dorothy Bauer, late at this time, sorry to say, she was wonderful. The Moody Mansion Museum of Galveston, the Texas State Preservation Board, Ken Wilson, Ken Wukash, Bruce Martin, you were the one who found that Wagner card at the Conservation Society of San Antonio. Thank you. And Kathy Beer. Thank you, Kathy. And then everyone's sending postcards. Why aren't you? So I'm done. Thank you. Questions? Let me come down off my high horse. Any questions? Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. Are you still picking me up, Robin? Should I come up here? All right. Yes, sir.
What is your assessment of the current postcard industry?
It's fine. And I say it's fine now in the sense of it's now very difficult to find postcards. I was in New York last year, and our hotel had no postcards. I went to the drugstore, went to CVS, no postcards. Oh, we might have some in the back. Go in the back. Greeting cards, no postcards. The only place in New York now, it seemed that New York City, that you could find postcards was Times Square. They had lots of postcards, beautiful, big, dramatic postcards. But nobody sends postcards. So in Galveston and the resorts, yes. But I'm curious to know, if any of you keep tabs on postcards in San Antonio, are they only at Alamo Plaza? Are there other places where you can say, Richard, you've got to go to this place to find postcards? Anyone? Yes, sir, Bruce.
The Alamo gift shop.
Ah, the Alamo gift shop. With the advent of this, and texting and Instagram, if any kid sees, we have them at the Bullock Texas State History Museum, a division or a sub-project of the Texas State Preservation Board. We have them in our gift shop there. We have them in our other capital gift shops. A lot of kids will go up to them, take a picture, and then walk away. And that's it, because they can make more out of it. And then there was about 15 years ago, do you remember the comic strip called Zits? Jeremy, the perennial, proverbial, constant teenager who never liked anything his parents did. Jeremy walks up and says, "What's this?" And his mother says, "Oh, Jeremy, isn't it wonderful? Your grandmother sent you a postcard from Florida." So, yeah, she sent it, wait a minute, she sent it 2 weeks ago? Yes, isn't it great? It's a souvenir from Florida. And he takes that thing and just goes. So that's the nature of it right now. And, I wonder often when I'm producing this book that's exciting to me and it's exciting to some of my friends, will it sell? Because does anyone know what a postcard is anymore? I hope that answers it. Okay. But the postcards haven't changed much since the 1940s. It's all photochrome or photo reproduction of color images like this. Any other questions? Are you hungry? Yeah. Okay, let's go. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
This is awesome. Make sure you sign up for things that are, the table sign-ups are out there. Did you enjoy this? All right, good. And we're just so thankful for you spending time with us today. Other announcements? I don't think so. I think that Everything is on the table. Just grab a seat and we'll make sure that you're fed. But allow me to pray. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the opportunity to have to gather together. Thank you for the history that has touched each of us, I'm sure, in just simple postcards, and for the artwork and the construction. And thank you that we have been able to hear so much about it. Pray that you would be with our gathering today, be with our time around the tables, give us great fellowship. Thank you for this food, and thank you for those who have prepared it and will serve it to us. And just go with us as we come together and keep us safe as we leave.